So, welcome to Replenish, hope that sustains in the midst of adversity. This is a safe place where I invite special guests to share encouragement and insights to replenish us on the journey of raising kids from hard places. So, whether you're an adoptive, kinship, foster, or safe family, this conversation is for you. I'm your host, Tristan McGee, and before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that the chat's open, so feel free to chat away, check in with each other, ask questions, answer each other's questions, and we'll be kind of looking at it and glancing at it, but feel free to chat away. And today I have invited Olivia Dahlin to join us for a conversation about trauma-informed school year, how we can be mentally healthy and successful this school year. So hi, Olivia. Before we get started, let me tell you a few things about what makes her so amazing. And this is just a small little smidgen of what makes her amazing. These are her qualifications for amazement. All right, Olivia Dahlin is the program manager for clinical services at San Bernardino County of Superintendent Schools Student Services Counseling Center. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed professional clinical counselor, and has a pupil personnel service and administrative credential. She has been providing mental health services for the Promise students in the educational setting for more than 12 years and is involved in the leadership team for PBIS implementation at county schools. Her clinical focus is child adolescent mental health treatment services using the Gestalt therapy, play therapy, eye movement desensitization processing, EMDR, some of you guys probably know about that. And she currently provides clinical supervision and training to associate marriage family therapist, associate professional clinical counselors, and associate clinical social workers. Olivia provides presentations to professionals and consumers in educational, medical, and law enforcement sector on suicide prevention, the identification of mental health issues in the classroom, and trauma-informed care. So that's a lot. She's got a big brain. She has a lot of experience. So Olivia, just to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what started you on this journey of working with kids from hard places?
Oh gosh. So, well, thank you for having me. First of all, it's a privilege to be here with you all, and I see so many friendly faces. So my hope is that we can just have a conversation, and hopefully I'll share some encouragement. But my desire to work with kids from hard places really came when I started working as a therapist. Initially out of school, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I realized that a lot of my heart was doing the one-on-one work with kids. And so I went to school and got my master's and started doing counseling and therapy. But what I found is that I always landed in jobs where I was working with kids who had really significant trauma, kids who had been through a lot, families who'd been through a lot. And the more that I worked with them, the more I just fell in love with them. The more I felt like I was stretched and grown as a person. And really the gratification of walking with families who are struggling for me has just been one of the gifts of my life and my career. And so that's kind of what's kept me in the game and kept me working with families, is just watching and helping support as people grow and find their way. Predominantly the populations that I work with are kiddos who have been expelled from traditional districts. So I work in the county, at the county program. So it's a lot of kids who are not doing well in their regular school setting, and so they're sent to the county program. And we're kind of the last stop for kids. There's not a lot of opportunities or options once you come to the county. These are kids who have really had not been successful in a regular school setting. And so our job is to help really support them so they can get on track. And so that's kind of what got me started. And then I have two of my own adopted kiddos. I adopted a year ago from Haiti. My son is 9 and my daughter is 5. So in this last year, I've been doing my own adoptive journey, getting to know my kids, and we're just changing our identity as a family. So that's kind of my passion. And I'm learning a lot from the other side as a parent too. So I had a lot of my clinical practice, but man, being a parent, like that's clinical practice is nothing. The real game is when you're in there with the kids and you're doing it every day. So that's really a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 gig, right? And that's what I love about you, and I love having guests on who are in the trauma-informed world professionally, but also are living that out at home, because it is a big difference. I remember a friend of mine, she's a pediatrician, and she said her practice totally changed once she had kids. It made a world of difference. So I just love the fact that you are also an adoptive mom.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure the people on the call appreciate that too. That's part of us feeling like we're in a safe place.
Yeah.
So let's get started, and let's talk about the stressors related to this whole COVID school.
Yeah. I think that initially a lot of us thought this was going to be a couple months. And so we were kind of tolerating the stress of COVID, and some of us were hit really hard at the beginning, and then it just kept dragging on. And here we are in the next school year, and we're still at home with our kids doing distance learning, and it's been overwhelming. And let's not to mention people who are working and trying to balance a job and teach their kids, be homeschool teachers. But when you have a home where you have kiddos who are from hard places, any significant change for them is going to result in difficulty, and it's going to result in triggers for them. And so I think not only are we stressed as parents and are we stressed as individuals, but we're also managing kiddos who are really stressed. And the biggest thing that I'm personally experiencing, and also have just received so much feedback from the families that I work with, is it's so overwhelming, and it's just prolonged. So it's this prolonged stress that's starting to really feel toxic, because I'm not finding relief, and it's not ending. And every time I think the end is getting closer, it seems to get pushed back a little further. And so prolonged stress, when we don't have the resources to manage that stress, can become toxic and can become traumatizing for people. And so I think acknowledging and recognizing all of the changes, changes for us as adults, but also even changes just in our environments. Our environments are completely different than they used to be. And the things that brought us comfort or that we had access to, we don't have access anymore. And so we're having to re-strategize. How do we survive in an environment that's different and that isn't offering the same options that I used to have available to me? So that's been a challenge. And I think that's created a lot of stress. I know for me and for my family, thinking on the go, like, okay, we can't do that. Now what? What do we replace it with? How do we strategize so that we can function and be well and healthy during this period of time? And I think that's been really hard.
Yeah, I would like to see in the chat, just from different people, how many of their kids are doing school virtually, how many are in person. I know I shared in the chat, we have one of both. My 7th grader, their school opened and he's in person.
Nice.
But like you said, even that is different. We noticed his level of stress is very high, and we can tell that by his behavior. We know that's the symptom of that. And because it's different. It does not look like what it used to look like. There's masks, there's hand sanitizers, there's arrows, and all these rules, that our kids are not used to. And then I do have one, going to school virtually as well.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Change is hard, regardless of how adaptable we are. Change is hard. And this whole experience is like on the go, on the fly, making all these changes, adapting. And that can be exhausting when you're constantly having to make decisions. That wears you out, creates a high level of stress.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I think, as a parent, I know I felt some relief with my son going back to school, just because you have that time, like that break, so to speak. But the behaviors then went up. So I don't know, what to think, but it's hard either way. It's really, it's a tough time for parents, and especially parents of kids from hard places. So we're talking about like making I have here in my notes a trauma resilient plan of action. Like, what are those key components? How can we begin to start thinking about what we need to do to not be so stressed and not have this, you know, ongoing stress become toxic and become you know, a source of trauma in our body?
Right, right. So some things that come to mind for me is it's something that you're going to say, well, yeah, that makes sense. We all know that. But as much as you can possibly do, set up your home, set up your own system, set up your day in an environment that's predictable, controllable, and safe. So the best way that you do that is routine, 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 routine. Because when someone has been exposed to trauma, the brain is looking for safety. It's safety seeking. And what we know about stress is that when we have things that we can predict, our brain actually is at rest. It actually is able to move into the more prefrontal cortex part of our brain, out of the lower part of our brain where we're functioning on a survival state. And most survival states happen because we don't feel safe. And when our environments, our life, our community, our everything has been disrupted, what our brain automatically does is hop into survival mode because it doesn't know any different. It doesn't necessarily have the ability to know the difference between something that's a perceived threat or an actual threat. And so your brain is going to interpret it, particularly if you've been from a hard place and you have a history of trauma in your background, it's going to perceive what's happening as actual threat. And so our goal is that we set up a system that is very, very predictable and that is routine, that we literally do the same things over and over again, almost to the point where sometimes it can feel monotonous, but it's that monotony that helps create safety in the brain, particularly for children who are from hard places. So setting up your schedule in a way that buffers the stress and helps to, so that your kid knows what's happening next, you know what's happening next, and you kind of can control the controllables. Because it's when we have these uncontrollables and we're putting those variables in and we're trying to control something that feels uncontrollable that our brain is going to shift into survival mode and not be operable in the same way that it would if we were having something we could predict and expect. So as much as you can do that, I would recommend that you have a set routine, a set schedule, and that it is predictable and that everybody in your household knows what you're doing and what's going on from moment to moment, so that there is that ability to kind of be in the safer part of the brain. Because a lot of those behaviors that we're going to see that are really tough in our kiddos are behaviors that happen when they're not feeling safe. So as much as possible, we want to set that up. Go ahead.
Do you have any strategies for setting that up?
Yeah.
Like if kids are kind of resistant to that, or I don't know, how rigid of a routine do we do?
Good question. I think the cool thing is that we want to set up a routine and we want to get there to be a practice of what to expect. So you can do that, set your routine and your schedule with your kid. So that there's collaboration in the process of what makes the most sense. And then be willing to adapt your routine if you feel like some of it's not working. So for instance, you might have, I'm going to speak specifically to distance learning families just for a second. You might have a kiddo who around 10:30, they have an automatic trigger that they're hungry, right? And so you might need to have snack time at that time, and then you might be able to get back to work at that right after snack. But you also might have a kid who gets hungry at 9:15 and you notice that they're more distractible, they're not really working with you, they're more prone to moodiness or fits. And so then you want to adapt, okay, what is my child's body indicating, or what's their behavior indicating that I may need to shift in my routine to make it work? So be willing to adjust as you go, but you want to have a routine where everybody's a part. So the more you can bring your child in the decision-making process, the better it's going to be, and the more buy-in you're going to have. And it also gives them choice. And when someone has been exposed to a lot of trauma, one of the things that they really do need is choice, because choice creates some safety for them as well. So when they feel like they have choice about how things are going to go, that can be really helpful in getting them to kind of come along with you in the process. But notice those things. Notice if there's any patterns that you are seeing about when they become the most distractible, when you notice they're the most fidgety, when you notice they become the most irritable, and then you want to make adjustments and kind of play with it and see if you find kind of what makes the most sense. So you're almost collecting data in a sense. As you go with your routine, you're sort of paying attention and watching and noticing and collect data, and then adjust as you feel like is going to fit your child the best and also fit you. So we all know it's really exhausting to be home full-time teaching. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I don't think a lot of parents thought that they would be home trying to do distance learning with their child. And that's why we have teachers, because it's like, it's not me. At least it's not me. I don't have to do this, right? But now we have to do this. And so all those funny messages and videos we've seen of parents saying like, I'm never going to criticize my kid's teacher again. It's that idea of being a parent and teaching your child. It's really challenging, not to mention when you have a child who already has a lot of difficulty and challenges, you have a lot on top. So making sure that you're also having a schedule that's good for you too, that you are a consideration in the process, that it's not just a consideration of how to accommodate to your child, but put yourself in the equation. What are the needs that you have as a parent too? Do you need to be tapped out at a certain point? Like, are you by 11 o'clock feeling like you're going to lose your mind and you need a 15-minute break? That might be a built-in break for you, because maybe the process is that you need time to regulate yourself, because sitting there and trying to do that work can be challenging. And so also paying attention and noticing what your needs are, and not forgetting to include yourself in that planning process is huge.
Yeah, I love that. It reminded me of, I was reading something today, and it was kind of along the analogy of that we hear about in the airplanes, we have to put on our oxygen masks first so that we can put on our kids. And I think it's the same in this matter. If we're totally stressed out, there's no way we're going to be able to handle our child's stress. But if, we can take care of ourselves and factor that in, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and to say something to that I think is really important, it's this idea of co-regulation, that our brains are designed to have mirror neurons, and they're designed to reflect we're seeing in the other person. And actually we think that that's only effective for kids, but the science is showing that that's actually effective for adults, that we actually regulate faster through co-regulation than we do through self-regulation. So think about that for yourself too. If you're finding that you are afraid and your nerves are frayed and you're overwhelmed, that's going to also affect your child, and they're going to pick up on those mirror neurons, and they're going to most likely be reflective of some of that frustration that you're having, or if you're struggling. So if they're struggling, we want to show up calmly and be in a place where we're stabilized so we can deal with them. But if we're not stabilized, we also have the ability, because emotions are contagious, to trigger their emotions. And then maybe they were calm, but now they're not anymore. And now we're both not calm, and things are a struggle. So the idea is that we want to always approach our interactions, especially when they're tough, where we are regulated. And so the question would be, who's your co-regulation? Do you have somebody for you that can help you calm down if you're not able to self-regulate in that moment? Because there's been some moments during COVID where I can say I've had some moments of just not feeling proud of the way that I responded, or just my reaction to things, because I was not in a state of being regulated. And so having someone to support me and say, like, talk me through that, what happened for you, and someone who's listening and attuned to my needs, they're going to help regulate me quicker. So if you do have the benefit of having a co-regulating partner as an adult, that can actually be really helpful for you too, and not just for our kids, but for ourselves too. So I want to kind of offer that idea as well.
Yeah, I know I have a few people that I on my kind of like text 911 so that when I'm feeling stressed, but I might not be able to give them a call or my husband's not home, I just send out a quick text like, you know, it just says I'm stressed, pray for me or whatever it is, you know, or I need help with this. And I just, you know, even getting back the, you know, little prayer hand emojis or, you know, or some words of encouragement, even if they don't know what's going on, like you said, that just really helps me. Like, okay, I have somebody on my side, someone who understands, and I can fill them in later, but that is so helpful.
Yeah, getting that support for ourselves. It's, you know, I'd like to think that we're all really capable of keeping our cool all the time, but it's just not a reality. When our stress levels are high, to have major changes in our mood, to have ourselves be more irritable, to have our patience to be, you know, short, those are all common reactions to stress. And so I think being kind to ourselves when we react in a way that's not effective is important, because when our kids aren't the only ones under stress, we're under stress too. And so giving ourselves that support to say, okay, you know, I'm not in a good space, or I need some support to calm down, and my reactions are valid and they're normal. It doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. It doesn't mean that I'm a dysregulated person or I'm a hot mess. I mean, sometimes I'm a hot mess, and that's true, and I can own that. But, you know, just to be able to give yourself some compassion that we are stressed, and so we are needing that support tremendously to make it through this and to be able to parent through this. So, and those mistakes are going to happen. And we call those ruptures in our clinic. We talk about rupture and repair.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of parents are afraid to rupture, and they think like, oh my gosh, I really messed up, or I shouldn't have, you know, reacted so strongly. And what I believe wholeheartedly is that rupture is a healthy part of relationship. As long as there's repair that follows rupture, rupture is us learning how to grow. It's learning how to forgive. It's learning how to ask forgiveness, how to own what's ours when we overreact or have bad reactions, and not necessarily beating ourselves up for them, but just making sure that when we have a rupture with our child, we repair it, we apologize, we make that connection happen so that it's not a rupture and then there's no connection after. As long as repair happens, I truly believe that that is, that creates healthy relationship, because we don't want our kids to have us on a pedestal and think we're perfect. We want our kids to know that we're human, because that allows them to be human too, and to have bad moments too,
Mm-hmm.
and for us to forgive them when they have them. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that was hard for me in the beginning because maybe what I did was not as significant as the way my child was responding. But I remember in 12-step programs, they talk about keeping your side of the street clean. So the way that I have grown to think about it is I'm apologizing for my part in everything, and I can just let God handle what their part is, or maybe there's a correcting moment or whatever that is. But I know that for me, asking for forgiveness and admitting that I did something wrong was, it took me time. You know, I had to practice and like build up to it. And now I can do that, but it's not something that's easy to do. And it takes, you know, baby steps, if you've ever watched What About Bob. But, you know, I think it's a hard thing to do, but like you said, the benefits are amazing, and having our kids to not feel shame for, you know, the challenges that they are experiencing.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, something I can share with my own personal son. What's really important in our household, and my husband and I have tried really hard to do, and we don't always nail it. So there are times where we don't get it right, but we really try to say we're sorry in front of the kids if we're unkind to one another, or if we react in a poor way to our kids, where We know we've hurt them. We really try to cause, if there's rupture, make sure that there's repair. And at first, our kids didn't ever say anything back, like, okay, like, thank you. You know, I mean, it was kind of odd for them. And now what's really cool that's been happening is when my son has some of his moments where he's triggered or struggles where his behavior is, he knows it's out of line, but he can't control himself, and he's not ready to shift into the higher thinking part of the brain. We'll kind of give him his space, but he's gotten to the point now where he'll come back. And the first thing he wants to do is say, Mommy, I'm sorry for my behavior. And so it's really cool because he's learning that model of repair, because my husband and I are trying really hard to make sure we fix things when we don't do them right, and that we are forgiving of ourselves when we don't, because there's a lot of pressure in parenting, and a lot of pressure, particularly when you're parenting a kiddo who's from hard places. The behavior sometimes feels relentless. And so it can be wearing. And so when we're already stressed, our reactions can just be difficult or not what we wanted. So it's important to give ourselves that self-compassion and remember, it's okay, let's just repair it.
I love that. And I love that you're talking about that we need to be a detective and figuring out the patterns of our children. And I was just wondering if you could speak into, you know, as we're talking about this, it's kind of challenging and stressful being the parent and the teacher. Maybe anything you can speak into in being that person, because our role that most of us have chosen was to be a mom and not to be our kids' teacher. If you're on this call, you probably aren't a homeschooler. You probably you know, chosen to just focus on the mom thing, but maybe not, I don't know. So it's challenging. The thing that I hear a lot from people is they're also trying to be the teacher and making sure the work gets done, the homework that used to be classwork gets done, which puts you kind of in an adversary role from your child that you didn't ask to be in. So how do you balance that, or any thoughts about that?
Yeah. First of all, it's hard. So honor what it is. Acknowledge that it's hard, that this is not something that you necessarily chose. And I'm going to probably say something super unpopular here, but it's important that we accept what is, that we are, I know all of us really care about our kids and we don't want there to be loss of learning this year. But what if there was? What if there was loss of learning this year? What would that mean for your child? What would that mean for you as a parent? We're not teachers. You know, right. That wasn't our initial role. And with our kids who are from hard places, they are very easily overwhelmed. And it's very helpful to have outside people who are pushing them in different ways, right? We need them. They're almost our resources. We're all a team, but we have to do it all with kids from hard places. It's too much for them and it's too much for us. So accepting what is, that there is a possibility that your child may have loss of learning this year, meaning not saying they're going to not learn anything, but maybe they wouldn't learn as much as they would if they were in school. And are you okay with that? Are you okay with doing the best that you can and pushing your kid to the point where you feel like they are able to handle, and then letting the rest kind of go? I know that that's not a popular answer because people really want their kids to excel and do really well, but you know, I just want to offer a different way of thinking about it. I mean, I work for a school setting, so it's not like I'm saying don't focus on school, but is it the most important thing during this period of time? Is yours and your child's mental health more important, or is making sure that they don't miss any learning in the school year and that you're killing yourself trying to make sure that everything is done the way it would with a teacher? So honoring and accepting what is, that this is hard and that this may not be totally, you may not get this at the same level as other parents. That's okay. So what level is possible? So asking yourself, what is my child capable of? And what am I capable of? what is too much for my child and what is too much for me. We want to do the best we can, and we do want to push our kids to do hard things. But if pushing them is going to result in huge meltdowns that are going nowhere and creating mental health crises in the home, is that worth doing? So you want to really ask yourself those questions. And then what are the supports that you need that you're not getting? Or what are the supports that you need that you think would really benefit and help you in that process? You know, I'll go back to routine later because I do have some suggestions that I didn't even mention about routine, but I think along this line of schooling, so a couple questions I would ask you to just really think about. What are you expecting of yourself? Really sit down and ask yourself, really honestly, what am I expecting of myself?
In regards to specifically
Schooling.
as being from your kids.
Yeah, no, what am I expecting of myself as a parent?
Okay.
So what am I expecting
in this
myself?
teacher role?
Yeah, what am I thinking is reasonable for myself? And then asking, what am I expecting of my child? Is it reasonable? What's makes sense that my child is able to do in this school environment where we're doing learning at home? So what are they capable of? What am I capable of? And being really honest with yourself about that process. Because what we don't want is you both to be pushing yourself past the point of maintaining positive mental health. We don't want to sacrifice either of your mental health to make sure that every single assignment is done. If your child is telling you that they are done and they are tapped out, then we want to honor and respect that, and we can try to come back later. But when we over push, this is new because we're doing digital learning and we're doing it on a computer. And how many of us normally sat in front of a computer for 6 to 7 hours of a day? How many of our kids are used to that? Right. Not many. Right. And so what's reasonable? What can I expect of my child and what can I expect of myself? That's within reason. And is my child capable of those things? It's really important that you answer those questions because yes, maybe a child who hasn't been through some of the things your child has been through is capable of doing those things. And we want to give our kids high expectations. Right. We don't ever want to lower our expectations, but we don't want to push our kids outside of their threshold of tolerance to now where they're in a window in their brain where they're no longer functioning. So how do we find out what that sweet spot is for our kids? And those are things like paying attention to what we're noticing about our kid. What are the reactions we're seeing? Where are they getting stuck? Where am I getting stuck? And what's the structure and support that I have in place that's helping me to do this? Do I have the structures I need? So that kind of looks like, what's the schedule that I have? What's the flexibility I have from the school? What have the school given me as resources to help me with this process? And I can talk more about that. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but again, it's knowing that all kids are different. What is reasonable for my child and what is reasonable for me to maintain our sanity and our mental health?
I love that answer. The three words I kind of got from you are, what am I or my child capable of? What am I or my child, what am I expecting from myself and my child? And then the last one was, I didn't get to write it down before I started talking. Capable, expecting, and you said one other thing at the end.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Oh, we both lost it.
I lost it, yeah.
I was writing it down and then...
maybe what's reasonable? I'm not
Yes, sure. That's it.
Yeah.
It was an R word and what's reasonable. Yeah. I like those things. I'm going to think about all three of those aspects. And then, yeah, so you wanted to go back to routine?
Yeah, well, let me talk for a second. I do want to say a couple of things about making sure that you have what you need.
Yes, because part of us probably don't even know what it is that we need. So I love the idea that you want to talk about the support systems, and because sometimes, when we hear you say that, we go, yes, that's exactly what I need, but we couldn't have thought of it on our own.
Okay, so a couple of things. Because I work with the school district, I'm familiar with programs that are going on, and I'm kind of familiar with what some of the distance learning stuff looks like. And I think it's important to note a couple of things. There's a difference between equality and equity. Those are very different things. And so when we have kids who are from hard places, what we want to understand is, what does our kids need? What are the needs, the specific, unique needs that they have? Do they have any special needs? Do they have any learning needs? Because giving every kid the same thing doesn't always mean that every kid is going to be successful. That's equality. Equity is giving every kid what they need to make sure that every child is successful. Those are different things. And as a school district, we have to meet that need. We have to rise to the occasion. So if we have kids who have special needs, then we need to make sure that we're providing equity and not equality. We don't just provide the same thing across the board, because we all know that our kids are unique. There are unique circumstances that have happened to them. They have unique needs, language needs. My child is ESL, which means English language learner. He's just learning English. So he has specific needs and needs things to be tailored to him. So understanding what your child specifically needs, and that can be contacting the school and asking for assistance. So if your child is an English language learner, there are English language tutors and teachers that schools have access to. And so it's saying, am I getting access to those options, those resources? You might have a family, hopefully you've all been provided with computers and what you need to be able to log into the programs that you need. But let's say that you're a family who has 5 kids at home and 5 kids are on the internet and it keeps crashing. Schools have hotspots where they could give you a hotspot, which is basically a way that your child could get in through that internet connection rather than jumping on the same internet connection. So what are the needs that you have? What does the district offer to meet those needs? It could be hotspots. It could be making sure that you have Chromebooks. Let's say that your kid is not doing well with being on the computer fully. Are there other options that the school district could offer you? Could they offer you packet work? Could that be an option for your child if that works better for them? So those are things that you can kind of think through about. I need to make sure that it's equitable for my child and that they have access to what they need to be successful, because it is going to look different. If you have a child that's on an IEP or an individualized education plan because they have special education needs, are they getting their services through distance learning? Is the school making sure that you have access? And if they're not, it would be calling the district and saying, hey, I need to make sure my child has these services so that they can succeed at this distance learning process. There's also tutoring. A lot of school districts have access to tutoring or funding for tutoring. So contacting the district and asking about that if you are feeling like you need some help with some tutoring, and what would that look like? Another really cool resource that you want to think about is social emotional learning. It's a really big hot button in education right now. A lot of school districts are trying to scramble about how do we provide social emotional learning lessons for kids. And so a lot of districts have purchased curriculum where they can actually do social emotional lessons in the classroom or do social emotional learning on the computer. And so it might be even reaching out to your district and saying, what are you doing in terms of social emotional learning to help my child adapt to the stress of what's going on with this? And what are the supports? What are the mental health supports that are available through the district? A lot of school districts will connect you with mental health resources. And so finding out what those are. Some school districts have mental health resources embedded into their actual school system. And so finding out those things is, do you have access to those resources that the school may have? And that would be contacting your principal or contacting the district office to find out if they can offer you access to those things for your child. And if they don't have access, then you can ask, are you guys planning to give access? Do you have referrals you can offer me to kind of help you to get what you need? Because we want this to be equitable for all kids, and that all kids have the equity and access they need to be successful.
I love that. That was a lot of great stuff. I guess I want to ask you too is how do we advocate for our kids if maybe we're asking the district for some of these things and it's hard to push through and get them to manifest, to happen.
I would say be consistent. Don't give up. Be consistent. And then the other thing is be talking with your teacher. Don't be afraid to reach out to your teacher and share that you are having struggles and having specific needs. I know for my son, he's in 3rd grade, but he didn't start school until November of last year. And then we had COVID happen in March. So his access to education has only been a couple months. So he's not at 3rd grade level. So for me, it's contacting his teacher, contacting the principal and saying, he can't do a lot of this distance learning because he has to be able to read to do the distance learning and he can't read yet. So what do you suggest? What can you help me with? And being consistent and talking with them. If things aren't getting better, don't wait. Be in contact, be calling, be emailing, because you want to get it in writing that you have some concerns about the success of how this is working for your child and that you are advocating. And I think the more that you're persistent with the district, the more likely you are to be heard. So don't give up. Don't just take a no. We can't help you. Say, okay, so then what resources do you have for me? How can I help my child in this way so that you can get the support that you need?
That's great. And I love that you mentioned hotspots. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I'm sure a lot of people, are strained digitally. So I just love that you even offer that up. I'm sure that that's a big help to some of the people with the larger families.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of people don't know you can request packet work. Like,
yeah, that's great.
Your kiddo is struggling digitally, ask for packet work. Go pick up worksheets, because if that is more helpful for your child to not be staring at a screen, then see what your teacher can do to accommodate that need. Again, if we don't ask, we don't know. We won't know if it's possible. So, it's definitely, it never hurts to ask. Don't be afraid don't think that you're going to be a bother and not ask. Get what you need. Get what you need, because you are the teacher. And so we want your needs to be met.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I like what you were saying earlier too about, choosing the relationship over schooling. But then yet I also love advocate as though you're the teacher. Like those are just two great points to remember.
Yeah, I had a friend that she's retired principal, and we were having a conversation, I think back in June, and she put it in perspective for me in a way that I just hadn't thought about. And she said, Olivia, none of us predicted this. None of us expected COVID. None of us thought we'd be at home trying to work and teach our kids. And, but what if the greatest gift that we got out of COVID is that our kids learned functional skills, like doing the laundry and learning how to cook and learning how to clean. And, it's not that we don't want to do the schoolwork, but what if we just shifted our mind kind of focused a little bit and reframed that to what kind of functional skills can I teach my child during this time that may not be necessarily things they're taught at school? How can I use this time to make them more productive and healthy people? Not necessarily that they're going to be the most academically savvy, but what if they walked away with some of those life skills? That'd be pretty great.
Yeah, definitely. I know I enjoy, my son enjoys cooking. And so, this is allowed when he was at home, it just allowed him to be more into that. And those are great life skills to know how to cook for your family.
Yeah, I wish I had learned that, because I'm a terrible cook. And so if I had practiced that at a younger age, I might be better at that at this point in my life, but I'm not.
Yeah,
so not a bad thing to work on life skills as well while you're at home. And in school, life skills is actually a credit class. So I'm just saying, it's a thing.
I love it. I love it. It's a good reminder. So I had asked in the chat if anybody had any questions, and someone was wondering, what if your kid's refusing to do schooling online, but doesn't want to go back to physical in school? Which I thought, the packets, like that you had mentioned, like that's,
Yeah.
I had never thought of packets either.
Yeah, there's different ways. I'll tell you what there's programs called independent study, and every district has a little bit different of a name for them, but those are for those non-traditional learners who may benefit from doing more homework at home, because we do have an independent study in the county that I work for. We have an independent study program, and those kids come once a week to see their teacher, not through COVID, but they pick up packet work and they do packet work, and then they can also have computer work, but it's a good hybrid way of kind of having a different style of learning. And it seems to really work for some kids because every kid is different. So finding what works is going to be the key. It's not going to be one size fits all. And if we think it will be, we're going to be really stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. And another person, Rhonda, had another question about kind of what we were talking about. Her kid is in special education and has an IEP, but she feels guilty asking the teacher for anything because she knows how stressed out the teachers are, because this is all new for them too. And I get that too. We don't, we got to give grace to our teacher. So how do she doesn't know what to do about that. How to push for what she needs, but yet give the teacher grace.
Yeah, and what I would say is be patient with your teacher. Don't give up. Don't decide not to speak up, because you are doing hard work. You are doing the hard work of trying to teach. So do follow through on the needs of your child, but be patient and give your teacher time. So I would say one of the most stressful things for school districts are people who are demanding and want it now and aren't willing to be patient, because school districts are scrambling. They've never planned for this. And, the mental health, I'll tell you, the mental health of our staff, they're struggling. So they have their own families and their own burdens. And so we want to be mindful and kind, but we don't want to, in the effort to be mindful and kind, give up pursuit of what our children's needs are, or our needs. We can be patient, but we be persistent, kind and persistent. And that goes a long way with school districts. Following back up if they aren't getting back to us, but giving them time to get back to us and figure it out and manage and balance. You're not an inconvenience to anyone to ask for your needs to be met or for your child's needs to be met. Not in any way. You are their biggest advocate. And I want to remind you, for those of us who were raised with that mentality that when we need something from people, we're burdening people. I know that a lot of us have that. You're teaching your child how to advocate for their needs by you showing them how to do it. And so if you don't do it, then they will receive the message that we don't ask for what we need, and we don't advocate for ourselves. So actually you're modeling a practice of advocating, and it's a really powerful model. So just know that if you think your child's needs are important enough to ask for, teach them how to do it by you modeling it first. And let them see you doing it. Let them see you making those phone calls and sending those emails, so that they can see what it looks like to ask for our needs and patiently wait and kindly pursue.
I love that. One of the goals we have for our kids for Hard Places is helping them understand that they do have needs and to ask for them and us meeting them. So I love that you bring that in, that us advocating for our kids in that kind, persistent, and patient way is showing them, how to voice our needs and get them met, and that our needs matter. So I love that you share about how we're modeling that. Anything else you wanted to talk about? We were talking about routine. I'm not sure if we went back.
Yeah, let me just say a couple things about routine. And then the last thing I want to talk about is supporting your own mental health and your child's mental health. I could talk for days about how to support your own mental health and your child's mental health, because that's really the area that I'm really passionate about. But I want to say one of the ways to help is, I had said setting up a routine and a schedule. Make sure that when you're setting up your routine that you are including exercise in your routine. that is a way that you care for your mental health majorly, not just your kids, but yours too. So making sure that in the routine and in the schedule that you're creating, your needs are getting met as well, that you're making sure that you're eating healthy, that you're avoiding alcohol or other substances, because in times of stress, we lean into our habits of coping, which can sometimes not be the best, like overeating, like, I just feel stressed and I just want to, feel some relief. And so we lean into habits that aren't always the best for us. And so if we're trying to address that stress, we really want to set up routine for ourselves and our kids. And exercise needs to be a part of that, because that is what is helping your brain function. It is helping to give you the chemicals that you need to keep depression at bay, to manage anxiety. Go into nature and set goals for yourself where you can master things, that you have a sense of self-mastery, because that brings a relief to the brain. And focusing on what you can control, being really clear with yourself about what the things are that you have control over in your day, and making sure you set those in your routine so that you do feel a sense of agency over your experience, that not that it's happening to you, but that you are managing and processing what's happening. And I have a list of a ton of ways that you can help do some self-care, and I would be super happy to send that list over.
Oh, yeah.
But we won't have time for me to go over them. But one of the things that I would say is along the lines of mental health and staying well, you have to have someone for you as a parent. You have to. I personally see a therapist. I see her twice a month. It is like a moment of relief in my month when I can sit down in front of her and talk and just say what's on my mind, have someone hear me out. So getting some mental health care for yourself and understanding that if this is stressful and if you're just going to help have some stress relief, that's great, but take care of your mental health. The things we can't get back is our health, our body, and our mental health. We have to focus on taking care of them. They're not things that just automatically stay healthy. There really has to be a balance. If our stress level is here, then our self support has to be here too. We can't just have high stress levels and do very little to support ourselves, because then it becomes an imbalance, and our mental health starts to be affected. So that can also look like, and I think you guys have set this up beautifully here, Tristan, having friends that are your go-to people that can hear your feelings, that aren't going to make excuses. So let me tell you what I mean. One of the things that has been the hardest for me as an adoptive mom, my area of training is trauma. So I understand very well what my kids need, but sometimes the behaviors are so overwhelming and they're so relentless, and I feel like I'm going to implode, right? I'm sure all of you can relate to that, I'm hoping.
Yes.
And I need to have a friend that I can call and vent to, who's not going to say, yeah, but, well, you really need to remember that. Well, have you thought about it from, it's like, no, I just need a friend to let me vent and let it be safe, so that I don't implode internally, or so that my mental health isn't affected, because I'm carrying so much of their own process, right? I'm carrying some of the behaviors as their trauma reaction, and we can get secondary trauma by being in someone else's trauma process. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you have a safe person that knows that you need to call and vent and be heard and be seen and be valued, and that's it. You don't need them to explain away your feeling or make you feel better. You just need to have a safe person. So that's a huge part of what I have realized in this journey, is that I just need a person to talk to sometimes. So please take good care of your mental health, value it, prioritize it, your physical and your mental health, because those are things that you are the boss of, and you are in control of those things. So it's important that you care for them very tenderly and well. And then the other thing is your child's mental health. we're out of time, but we want to know what warning signs are that we're looking for in
Mhm.
kids when they're starting to decline. We have behaviors that can be really disruptive, but also kids' mental health can become, when they're overly stressed or they're triggered, it's chronic. Sometimes they internalize and we're not even aware that they're struggling. So checking in with your child and asking them how they're doing, having little conversations every day where you're saying, you know, things like, how is today going for you? Was today a hard day or a good day? What did you enjoy the most about today? What did you learn from today? And how do you feel today? And one of the ways that you can do that is putting a feeling chart up in your house to remind yourselves as a family to check in on yourself. And we have one on my fridge. It's a little feeling chart, and we move the magnet over the feeling that we have for that day. And the cool thing is that when other people see that, they know where we're at. So like my husband might say tired, and then I might move it to, so I know, okay, he's tired today. But it's also a reminder to check in on yourself. So having a visual to remind you to check in, but also sending a signal to your, whoever your partner is or whoever is helping you in this process, to check in on yourself and your mental health. And then also giving your kids a chance to see you model that and to ask them so they're checking in too.
I love all of those things and all of those suggestions. We're gonna, I'm gonna get that list from you and I'll post it in our Facebook group, Safe, Precious, and Heard. And also, I just want to let everybody know that that's a great place too. You can go to get plugged in. If you don't have that person that you can vent to that is a safe person that isn't going to tell you should be doing this X, Y, and Z, but doesn't understand it themselves, that our Facebook group is a great place to get started and getting plugged in. We have several online support groups, and you don't have to go at this alone. And 90% of my guests who have been on, if you've been watching, are highly recommend counseling for yourself. And most of them are doing it themselves, that this is a stressful, not only line of work to be in, but as a foster adoptive parent. So I just want to echo what you were saying, Olivia. And we are running out of time. I do want to end with the 3 questions I always end with. So we're going to transition, and I'm going to ask you these questions, and it's a speed round, like speed dating. Okay, here we go. What brings you joy?
Nature. The older I get, the more I appreciate nature. So that's become really predominant for me.
Me too. Okay, if you could say one thing to your younger self when you first started this journey, what would it be?
Things are not going to turn out the way you expected. Accept what is and just breathe through it, because life is unexpected.
Awesome. Yes. And what foster adoption myth would you like to just blow up right now?
Oh, you know, this is a hard one for me, but I think it's the idea that we save our kids. I hear that a lot. It's very well-meaning, but we create environments for our kids to be loved, but we give them opportunities. But they don't need us to save them. They can save themselves, and they are capable of finding the strength inside of them. We just create the environment where they're able to heal and flourish. And so I think it's important that people hear that adoptive parents are not saving children. That takes away from the autonomy that my child has to grow up and be a strong person.
Yeah, I would agree. I just heard a good podcast on that, that whole topic. Well, my friends, I just want to invite you to stick around for our after party from 5:30 to 6 o'clock, where we will continue the conversation. For anyone wanting to talk about what we just heard, ask the community questions, seek prayer, or just listen in. This is a time for you to be able to share and make connections with all of us. This is a time for foster adoptive kinship parents. If you're not one of those, you're welcome to just listen in, but we ask that you just listen in. So Olivia, I just want to thank you and all who called into this week's Replenish Zoom. I pray all of you who are struggling during this time feel replenished and had received some hope to sustain you. Again, don't forget to join our private Facebook group, Safe, Precious, and Heard. And remember, until next time, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, only a growing parent. Thanks, Olivia. Appreciate
guys.
it. So
Thank you.
much great content.
Great to be here with you. Be kind to yourselves. We need it.
Thank you.
Take care, you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.